Applied Computational Fluid Dynamics for Automotive, Space and Defense sector, sponsored by AICTE under AQIS. Our today's session speaker is Dr. Yogesh Bumkar sir. He is the assistant professor in the School of Mechanical Sciences at IIT Bhubaneswar. Regarding his academic details, sir has done his B in Mechanical Engineering in 2002 from College of Engineering Pune, ME in Space Engineering and Rocketry in 2006 from Birla Institute of Technology, Meshra, PhD in Aerospace Engineering Department in 2012 from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. Regarding his research interests are high accuracy, high performance computing, computational aeroacoustics, the turbulence models on DNS and LES. He has more than 28 publications in international journals and has more than 12 publications in international conferences. He has worked on several government-funded projects, which include projects funded by ISRO, DST, ARNDB as well. Regarding his work experience, he has worked as Senior Student Research Associate from August 2011 to July 2012 at High Performance Computing Lab in Aerospace Engineering Department at IIT Kanpur under the guidance of Professor Tapan Sen Gupta. He has postdoctoral research at National Taiwan University from 10 September 2013 to 10 July 2013. He has worked as a visiting faculty at School of Mechanical Sciences at IIT Bhubaneswar from 12 July 2013 to 11 March 2014, and currently he is there as an assistant professor. Sir, we are fortunate to have you in this session. Thank you very much. You can start your session now, sir.
Yeah. So thank you, Professor Maharshi. Thank you very much for this nice introduction. Let me say that actually I feel very happy to be among with all of you, and purpose of actually coming to this particular session is just to share my joy with all of you. There are certain things actually which make me feel happy, and I'm actually presenting my those things which make me happy. I'm sharing my joy with all of you. So that is how simple this talk is going to be. So I hope this slide is visible to you.
Yes, sir. It
yes.
is visible. It is
okay. So in any case, actually, if someone has any question, any doubt, or anything you want to say, please feel free to say in the middle of the talk. Do not actually worry about anything. And yes, the questions are very much welcomed throughout this particular talk. Okay. So thank you very much again. I have actually the kind of actually title of the talk which I have given to you. I have slightly modified that title, as actually I have seen that there are other speakers who have already talked about other various issues like transitional flows, high performance computing, aerospace applications. Everything was actually touched upon. So actually I thought that let me actually give some another taste of another area to the participants here. So I'm going to talk about simulation of aeroacoustic problems. Okay. So I think the laser pointer is now visible. So thank you very much. And let us start about discussing on aeroacoustic problems. So acoustic, everybody knows actually, we are talking about sound. And the word aero, which is attached in front of acoustic, it means that actually the sound created by flow around object or flow inside a passage. So any sound that is basically created by fluid movement or fluid motion, that is termed as aeroacoustic problem. And one can do experiments to measure the sound created by flow past a body, flow inside a duct. But then one can also do some simulations to understand how the sound gets generated due to fluid motion. Now, all of us know actually, whenever we start a fan, we hear some kind of a sound. It is basically created by the fluid motion around the fan blades. So, invisible to us, there are those small eddies which are formed when the flow passes over the fan blade. Those eddies basically create some kind of a unsteadiness in your flow. Unsteady disturbance pressure is basically recognized by our ears in the form of sound. And we are going to discuss about how this sound is generated, how it gets propagated, reflected, diffracted when it actually propagates through air. Corresponding numerical simulations, how one should do, what are the difficulties. That is what is the idea of this particular talk. Okay. So this is just an introduction. Okay. We will talk about it. I'm on second slide. This slide is like computational aeroacoustics. Aeroacoustics problems which are handled computationally, numerically. So this research area is computational aeroacoustics, and as you can see, there is a strong coupling between the physics behind the flow motion, sound propagation, sound generation, mathematics, and then in addition to that, scientific and high performance computing. Everything is basically connected together. Basically, until and unless you have scientific computing, you really cannot do high performance computing. So one has to understand science behind computing in order to achieve high performance in computing. And such high performance computing is need of computational acoustic problems. One has to realize that traditional CFD problems, they are probably too simple in front of these computational acoustics problems, because the kind of computational resources required for solving these computational aeroacoustics, commonly referred as CAA, those resources required for CA problems, they are enormous. Solving such problems is very, very tough, and we have to understand all these aspects together in order to solve these aeroacoustics or CA problems. Okay. So let us actually begin by discussion on what are sound waves actually. Everyone knows, we have seen it in our school. Sound waves are associated with pressure variation in an elastic medium, and then these are triggered by either a vibrating surface or a turbulent fluid motion, right? Sound waves, acoustic waves, travel in air in the form of pressure fluctuations, which are above and below the ambient atmospheric pressure. So we have mean atmospheric pressure, something like 10 raised to 5 pascals. In above and below this atmospheric pressure, these actually sound waves travel in the form of pressure fluctuations. In air, sound propagates in the form of longitudinal waves. You can see here animation actually. We are considering here a case where the fluid is not in motion, but then there is a propagation of sound waves. And you can look at particular like one small fluid element or particle. When actually sound waves propagate in the medium, this particle basically oscillates about its mean position. Particle does not go from one position to another position. It does not undergo any permanent displacement because there is no fluid motion as such. We are thinking about sound propagation in a still medium. So basically, when the energy is input on the left hand side, sound energy, through this molecular interaction, fluid elements interaction, this energy is basically convected from left hand side to the right hand side in the form of these compression and rarefaction zones, all you can see here. So this is typically how sound waves propagate in an air. You can see a region where fluid elements are very close by, particles are very close by, that is called as compression region. The region where particles are separated by a large distance, you have less pressure there, so that is called as rarefaction zone. So compression, we have rise in pressure, while rarefaction, we have like fall in pressure. That is what is observed when we measure like sound pressure fluctuations. Now, this is just to give a brief introduction about sound waves. One has to basically characterize these sound waves, and one can characterize sound waves in terms of their amplitude and wavelength. You can see here that we are talking here about those fluid elements which are when close by, you have rise in pressure. When the fluid elements, they are separated by large distance, there is a reduction in pressure that is called as acoustic pressure reduction. And again, when the fluid elements are nearby, there is rise in pressure. So wavelength is basically termed as a distance between two consecutive peaks with the same kind of a phase. This is the maximum amplitude of a pressure wave, Pmax. And then we have these pressure fluctuations on and above and below of this atmospheric pressure. So wherever actually we have higher pressure, it is like a compression zone. Wherever we have lower pressure, it is like a rarefaction zone. So amplitude is basically talking. We talk about how much and how below uh, the pressure fluctuations amplitude can go above and below this atmospheric pressure. So there is a wavelength that we have just now talked about. There is something called as frequency. So if you actually stand at a particular point and then if you record sound, then what you are going to hear is that pressure variation with respect to time. Number of pressure variation cycles that you will record per unit time, that is basically understood as frequency, which is expressed in hertz, and time period required for the pressure to undergo one particular cycle, similar to this wavelength, where we have spatial variation. If you stop at one particular point and measure the sound pressure variation with time, you will see you can measure the time required to undergo one cycle for a pressure wave. So that particular time period is called as T, which is inverse of frequency. These things are basically uh, told to us in the school, also in the engineering. I have just actually kept there here for a purpose of actually introduction. We know that actually that sound in air at sea level, it propagates with a phase speed c. So the velocity with which sound propagates at sea level is around 340 meter per second. And interesting part is that no matter what the frequency of sound disturbance you create or what the wavelength of sound wave is, the multiplication of frequency into wavelength is always constant. That is what is observed for a sound wave propagating in air. So C is equal to n lambda or f lambda. That is the expression that we have seen. So this is interesting that I am creating some sound waves and then my microphone is basically recording those sound waves. They are transferred to your computer and then your speaker is basically vibrating with different frequencies to create sound of different frequencies. No matter what the frequency of the sound is, the corresponding wavelength of the sound is adjusted in such a way that product of frequency times wavelength is always a constant, and that constant is nothing but speed of sound. So sound propagation speed in air at sea level condition is around 343 meter per second. That means that actually, if you have, let's say, frequency somewhere in the range of, let's say, 10,000, what you can expect is that corresponding wavelength will be a fraction of a centimeter, very, very small. So C is 343 meter per second. And then if the frequency is 10,000 hertz, then the lambda will be 0.03 meter. It will be like lambda will be like 3 centimeter. In contrast, if the frequency of sound is something like 20 hertz, that is the smallest sound probably we can hear, smallest frequency one can hear. So for 20 hertz, the wavelength will be something like 17 meter. Now you can think about this disparity in the scale. Like 17, like a building height or a particular floor height may be something like 2.5 meter or 3 meter. So the lowest frequency that we can hear, corresponding wavelength will be as high as high-story building. The highest frequency that one can hear is like 20,000 hertz. Corresponding wavelength will be like a centimeter or probably less than that. something like you can see the disparity in the scales, spatial and temporal scale. Okay. So one has to really appreciate the multi-scale nature of the problem. I have actually already told you that sound waves are nothing but pressure fluctuations which are superimposed over the mean atmospheric pressure. And what you can see is that the mean atmospheric pressure is something like an African elephant or Asian elephant, which weighs around 2,500 kilogram. If you make this elephant stand on a square slab, 15 centimeter by 15 centimeter area, the corresponding pressure will be something like close to 1 atmosphere. So whenever actually we talk about a background atmospheric pressure, we can think about elephant standing on a 15 centimeter by 15 centimeter kind of area. So that kind of pressure will be close to our atmospheric pressure. In contrast, like the kind of disturbance that we hear or the kind of sound that you are hearing is something like if you take an ant, which generally weighs around 60 milligram, if you make the ant stand on the same 15 centimeter by 15 centimeter area, the kind of pressure which will be created by this ant weight will be something like around 2.5 Pascal. And that particular sound will correspond to around 50 decibel. So that is the general sound level usually in a room or in a working atmosphere. So whenever actually now you can see that difference actually between this different the mean atmospheric pressure and then the kind of sound disturbances amplitude. They are completely different actually. They happen at completely different scales. So whenever actually I want to simulate sound generated by flow past a body, let's say, I need to actually solve my Navier-Stokes equations, which will capture this mean atmospheric pressure without any problem. But then my solver or my equations should be accurate enough even to understand or quantify this small disturbance, which is basically several orders small, almost like 5 or 6 orders small as compared to your mean atmospheric pressure. Please understand here that every calculation has numerical error, and then that numerical error should not be, or that numerical error should be so small that it will not interfere even with a quantity which is order 5 less than your hydrodynamic quantities. So the numerical error has to be exceptionally small when it comes to computational aeroacoustic problems. If it is not small, then we will not be able to understand whether the signal is sound signal or whether it is a numerical noise. So now actually you can bit feel about the complexity of the problem. We are dealing with a problem where actually the hydrodynamic scales and the sound scales, they are actually separated by few orders. So please appreciate that particular fact. And when we do simulations, the numerical methods have to be exceptionally accurate in order to do so. Now, what are the really requirements of high accuracy computing? So one important point is that everyone appreciates probably that the adopted numerical schemes to solve the partial differential equations, those schemes must resolve all physical time and length scales. If something is happening at the frequency of 10,000 hertz, I should be able to actually record or I should be able to see that 10,000 hertz variation. Okay. If some scale is basically happening over a few millimeter kind of length scale, I should be able to see that scale. So the numerical schemes, spatial and temporal discrete schemes, they should actually resolve all the physical time and length scales. Then actually when we compute, we know that our problem is unsteady. There are spatial and temporal derivatives. And when we actually solve those equations, when we find out the physical parameter variation with respect to time, its evolution over period time, the numerical methods basically they have tendency to implicitly or explicitly attenuate your flow disturbances or the physical parameters which make them stable. Now, such stable schemes are actually preferred by the whole CFD community because at the end of the day, those stable schemes they give you some answer. They don't give you not a number kind of situation. Now, that situation is little bit uh, difficult to justify. One has to understand that if in a room actually, if I start a air conditioning system, temperature of the room will go down. Instead of starting a air conditioner, if I start burning woods in that room, temperature of the room will go up. You can see here that there are physical mechanisms which actually rise, which are resulting in either rise or fall in temperature. So the temperature variation inside the room is basically governed by the physical mechanisms. But then when we solve the problem numerically, we really do not need actually that uh, there is a physical mechanism to start or like there is a physical mechanism to rise or fall in temperature. In fact, some of the numerical methods they can be so bad that without any presence of physical mechanism, they can result in either fall or rise in temperature. So what we need is that numerical schemes must be neutrally stable. Numerical schemes should not interfere with the increment or decrement of solution variables. The physics of the problem will dictate whether the variable should rise or fall in space and in time. The numerical schemes should not basically result in unphysical amplification or attenuation of the signal. That is what we mean by neutrally stable. So the stable numerical schemes can lead in disaster, can lead in unphysical picture. We have to make sure that the numerical schemes should not interfere with the physics of the problem. They should remain neutral. The important point here is that in order to get some solution, stable solvers, stable schemes are preferred. But then we should actually understand that added numerical dissipation should be very minimal. In the ideal situation, there should not be any added numerical dissipation. The third important point is that each and every resolved wave number component, it must actually propagate its phase and energy at the correct speed. Generally, the CFD community is happy about choosing a particular length scale or choosing a particular grid, which can basically resolve the physical time and length scales. But when the physical scales are resolved, we have to also make sure that those physical scales travel. Or when I say physical scales, roughly I mean here that all those small ADs, vortices, which are resolved by the used grid or by the used numerical methods, those eddies should travel at a correct propagation speed. You understand that the free stream velocity may be like u infinity, while the vortices which are convecting in the wake region, that speed is not u infinity. That is a fraction of free stream velocity. So the mean flow approaches the body with the free stream velocity, while the eddies convect in the wake region at some another speed. There is a momentum loss in the wake region. So whatever we are going to resolve, every component has to travel with the correct physical speed in a numerical simulation. If it doesn't happen, there is a source of worry. Okay. So now actually we will come to this particular first aspect. We will come to this first aspect about, we said that we need to actually, we need to actually resolve all the physical time and length scales, right? So is there any question up till now? Just I want to make sure that I'm actually connected with all you people. Okay. So any question, anything, any comment you want to say? Please feel free to say. Huh? Okay. So now I'm going to my next slide. So is it visible, this resolving ability of a special discussion scheme, this slide?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So actually, now we are going to talk about what do we mean by resolving ability of a special displacement scheme. And then actually, I want to attract your attention to an event which has happened somewhere in last December. There was a conjunction, Saturn and Jupiter conjunction. I hope you remember during the evening time, somewhere in the south and west corner, Saturn and Jupiter, after long duration, came very close by. And I tried actually, I got that image, high resolution image from internet. You can see here, we have Jupiter, we have Saturn, and we can see actually this image where we can actually differentiate between Jupiter and Saturn. Remember that Jupiter is like a big planet, Saturn is literally small, and then the Saturn is at a much more larger distance from Earth compared to Jupiter. Jupiter is appearing bigger compared to Saturn, and we can distinguish in this high resolution image. The same actually event I saw with my eye, I was able to actually distinguish between those two different objects. I tried to capture that image using my mobile camera, and you can see here, I can see only one dot, right? Actually, with the eye, I was able, with my own eye, I was able to distinguish between the Jupiter and Saturn. Even if you actually zoom this image, you can see only Jupiter. The Saturn is basically information available with Saturn is now not available in this image. So that is why actually in modern days mobile phones you need you they advertise at mobile phone is coming with so many megapixels. Higher the number of pixels in your camera, the camera has more ability to distinguish between those details. So my camera, my mobile camera is not good, doesn't have good resolution. So I'm not able to even see this Saturn. I'm only able to see this big Jupiter. Now, the numerical methods, they are something like this. A bad numerical method will only be able to see Jupiter, like the my mobile camera. But then if you have a good numerical method, which has ability to resolve, which has ability to capture the smallest details in your domain, then it will end up in actually understanding the presence of all these different scales present in your domain. So when we say that our method should be able to capture all the structures, all the scales, I mean that what are the physical things happening, the method should be able to show in corresponding solution. Okay. So this particular aspect I have tried to show using these images. What happens actually when we do simulations, okay, we end up in actually basically dealing with some kind of a signal. So whenever actually we do some experiment or whenever we do any computation, we are basically dealing with signals. Those signals mostly like physical quantity variation with respect to space and time. They are basically like analog signals. They are continuous functions of space and time. And then we want to understand how these signals vary in our domain. So in nature, basically, we have two different types of signals, like analog signals and digital signals. Digital signals are special forms of analog signals, which are obtained by two operations called as sampling and binary coding. The term sampling is of interest to us because we need to know that in order to understand this particular quantity variation in space and time, how much small distance should be there between two grid points, how much small uh, gap be there between two consecutive time steps. So the grid spacing delta x, the time step delta t, which is used in our grid, which is used in our solver, they basically indicate how we are going to resolve these signals. So let us actually see here this particular signal pressure variation with respect to time. And although the physical quantity varies like this, if I have only one sample in one cycle, I will get one sample here, another sample here, next sample here, next sample here. In the end, when I look down what I have measured, I will see that my physical quantity has not varied with respect to time. It is something like a steady state kind of condition. But then that is not the situation. My signal is varying with respect to time. So basically, I should have sufficient amount of sampling in order to actually understand this signal variation with respect to time. So instead of one sample, if I have two samples in one cycle, okay, so one cycle means this between this particular time period. Let's say if I have two samples, then I can see basically time variation of the signal. But still, I am not sure actually how the signal is varying. So one has to understand that before we start actually doing any experiment or any computation, the chosen time step, chosen grid size, chosen sampling frequency has to be sufficiently small in order to capture the physical phenomena under investigation. Many times, CFD practitioners turn blind to what grid size one should use, what time step one should use. One has to understand the physical nature that one needs to capture in a particular problem. If we understand the physical nature of the problem, then only we can think about using appropriate grid size and time step. Okay. Now, understanding of all these things are essential for your aeroacoustic problems. So here actually I have shown you here a adequately sampled signal. Okay. So in one cycle, let's say from this negative to peak to this negative peak, there are so many actually samples you can see by these dots. And then when we have those large number of samples in a cycle, we are able to see the signal properly. We are able to understand the signal properly. But instead of this large number of actually samples, if I have, let's say, one sample here, another sample here, next sample here, next sample here, when I will try to actually see how the signal varies, and if I try to connect all these samples, instead of this high frequency signal, I will misunderstand that my physical quantity is varying very slowly with respect to time. So that is called as aliasing. I hope actually you have seen this case that if you have a table fan and then that table fan rotates at very high velocity, then sometimes it appear to us that the table fan is rotating in the opposite direction with a very low velocity or less revolutions per minute. That is essentially because the fan blades rotate so fast, our eyes are not able to cope up with that kind of high revolutions per minute kind of speed. The rate with which our eyes can capture and process information, that rate is so slow compared to the revolutions of that fan, we feel that the fan is rotating with a less velocity. So this is called as aliasing. So it shows that we need adequate sampling for a particular signal. Typically, people say that in order to understand the signal, the minimum sampling frequency should be more than two times the signal frequency. That is called as Nyquist criteria. In the real world scenario, Nyquist criteria is too optimistic expression. The sampling frequency should be at least, let's say, as a thumb rule, 5 to 10 times the signal frequency in order to understand the physical details. Okay. So all these things, they are now important in understanding how we solve the things. Okay. So is this slide is visible? Simulation of advection equation.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. Okay. So now actually let us actually talk about solution of partial differential equation. And now I'm not talking about any complex problem. I'm not talking about three-dimensional non-linear partial differential equations, something like our Navier-Stokes equation. I'm not also talking about multi-scale problem. I'm not dealing with multi-phase problem. This is the simplest equation where one has time derivative and space derivative. People call it as one-dimensional wave equation, advection equation, convection equation. No matter what the equation name is, the message delivered by this equation is important, and the message delivered is the analytical solution of this equation suggests that the initial condition with which we are going to solve this problem, that initial condition will neither attenuate nor amplify because we do not have here any second order derivative, dissipation, or diffusion term. So no matter whatever the amplitude you will start with, or no matter whatever the initial disturbance you start with, that initial disturbance basically propagates from left to right with the phase speed c, and then the shape of that function, shape of that initial condition basically travels with phase velocity c, but then it neither amplifies nor attenuates. So the initial condition travel from left to right without any amplification or attenuation, and the initial condition will propagate at phase speed c, no matter whatever the wavelength of that initial condition is, irrespective of the wavelength, it travels with phase speed c. So that is called as there will not be any dispersion. The word dispersion means according to the wavelength, every wavelength will have its own phase speed c. So that is called as dispersion. What this equation suggests us that the initial condition, irrespective of its shape, its wavelength, it will travel with phase speed c. Now all these things are important because we know that irrespective of wavelength, sound disturbances travel at 340 meter per second. When I'm now talking with you, I'm creating all those sound disturbances with the different frequencies. Irrespective of the frequency, all those sound disturbances are basically reaching your ears with the velocity 343 meter per second. However, when I do this thing numerically, what generally is observed is that depending on wavelength, the velocity with which these sound disturbances will travel, they differ actually. That is what is observed numerically, which is in complete contrast with respect to the physical scenario. So one has to actually worry about these aspects actually. So that is why we have considered this example. Now actually next slide I'm going to show you one animation. That animation basically corresponds to, in the top frame I'm going to show you how exact solution should vary with time. So the initial condition will propagate at phase velocity c from left to right. Then actually I'm going to show you two numerical solutions with in addition to that exact solution. So the time integration scheme used in those two numerical solutions is like Runge-Kutta fourth order scheme, while the special discretion has been obtained using two different schemes which have same order of accuracy. Remember Taylor series analysis? So Taylor series analysis classify numerical methods based on order of accuracy, and general interpretation of the CFD community is that if two methods, if they have same order of accuracy, they should provide similar results, right? Now we are going to see something different. We are going to see that the time integration will be same in two numerical solutions, but the special discretion schemes will be different, but then they have same order of accuracy. And see the results. So here basically the top frame shows you the exact solution variation from t equal to 0 to t equal to 50. So the solution of advection equation, exact solution shows that the initial condition should propagate from left to right with phase velocity c. This is the exact solution. The second frame tells you about solution of Runge-Kutta fourth order time integration scheme and a scheme which is second order accurate called as OUCS scheme. Basically, its solution looks something similar to your exact solution. However, if you look at again a second order accurate scheme like Siritu scheme and fourth order time integration scheme like Runge-Kutta scheme, you will see that the solution completely different. Instead of going from left to right, the solution is now going from right to left. And this happens despite CD2 scheme and OUC3 scheme, which are used for evaluating dou u by dou x term, they have same order of accuracy. This brings us to the question, should we really bother about order of accuracy of a numerical scheme? Like if I want actually my numerical schemes to be accurate, Should I really bother about their order of accuracy? And the alternate question is it sufficient to characterize numerical error as traditionally thought combination of truncation error and round of error? Because traditionally, actually, what Taylor series analysis tells us about truncation error, that truncation error nowhere here justifies the different nature of Siri2 RK4 solution and OUC3 RK4 solution. As a rough analogy, which I generally like to give in my class, which is not very appropriate to do so, but still you can think about you being someone who has who got a job in climate center. You have to predict cyclone path. Cyclone is somewhere in close to port of Vishakhapatnam. Over next few days, you have to predict where the cyclone will move, and then people in Bhubaneswar and people in Chennai, they are completely in opposite direction to Vishakhapatnam. The cyclone physically moves from Vishakhapatnam to Bhubaneswar, but then your numerical methods are so bad, you end up in predicting the cyclone path from Vishakhapatnam to Chennai. People in Chennai and Bhubaneswar both will be unhappy with your prediction. So remember here, we are solving partial differential equations, we are solving governing equations. No matter we are solving the conservation laws, it doesn't guarantee that we will get physically relevant picture. And that happens because we do not understand our numerical methods. We need to understand our numerical methods, our numerical tools better. Then only we can actually apply those numerical methods in solving partial differential equations. Huh? Remember that if you want to do experiments related to turbulence, you will have to use hot wire anemometers because they actually talk about, they give information about those turbulent fluctuations. If you end up in using a pitot probe, you will get only information about the mean flow, right? So understanding numerical methods, numerical tools is central. So there is a famous quote by Mark Twain: what gets us really into trouble are not the things which we do not know. Many times the things that gets us into trouble are the things which we know for sure, but then they are just aren't so. The CFD community relies so much on characterizing numerical methods based on order of accuracy. Sometimes we are misled with that order of accuracy business. So the important point is that whenever you want to have accurate methods, don't actually quantify numerical methods based on order of accuracy. In fact, I have made here a slide to boldly put things in your mind that it is possible actually to construct a lower order accurate method which will give us a more accurate result as compared to traditionally designed higher order accurate method. These letters, this sentence is written in a bold fashion. Please understand that a lower order accurate method can sometimes provide more accurate results as compared to higher order accurate methods. This is possible actually, and this is possible, and we have to understand why this thing happens, right? Maybe actually it is very difficult to justify this sentence using traditional Taylor series kind of analysis of numerical methods. One has to understand numerical methods in a better sense, and to understand those methods actually, such equations actually, model equations, they help us a lot. Okay, so we need to do something more. But what we should do, how should we quantify, how should we analyze numerical methods accuracy, those questions will be answered after these two slides, or not completely answered, but then I will give you some information how to analyze numerical methods. I will tell you about some material, after reading which, after understanding which, you will able to justify this particular sentence. So the crux is a lower order accurate method can provide more accurate results as compared to higher order accurate method. Just look at the solution of this one-dimensional wave equation, advection equation. So same problem now I am showing here. So here the first column shows solution of second order central difference scheme, CD2 and RK4 time integration scheme, while the second column here shows about solution of OUCS3 special discretion scheme and RK4 time integration scheme. The red is the computed solution and green is the exact solution. At two different times, you can see that the computed solution using CD2 scheme lags behind the exact solution of that wave equation. This is called as dispersion error. Although the physical nature of the equation says that the initial disturbance will propagate with phase velocity c, the numerically computed solution does not propagate with phase speed c. However, the solution obtained using OUCS3 scheme, which has same order of accuracy as CD2 scheme, propagate with the correct phase speed c. So here we do not have any error. That error is called as dispersion error. The packet speed is same as the physical speed. So we do not have here any dispersion error, but here we have tremendous dispersion error. And that will lead to wrong prediction of sound propagation event. So any solution obtained using CD2 scheme will definitely give you wrong prediction of sound propagation. Because wave equation or sound propagation tells us that irrespective of the wavelength, we are going to have phase speed c, right? So that is basically guaranteed only in high accuracy numerical methods. I'm not saying high order accurate method. I'm just saying high accuracy numerical method. So this is, we have just talked about dispersion error, which is related to the propagation speed of the initial condition or to the disturbances in your solution. Then next we are going to talk about dissipation error. So what do I mean by dissipation error? Again, actually, I am here showing you two solutions. One is obtained using finite element method scheme, SUPG scheme, and one is finite volume method scheme, that is like quick scheme. So the fluent actually solutions, many solutions, they are reported using quick scheme. What you actually see here that as time progresses, the red computed solution, the packet basically tracks the exact position of the analytical solution. So the phase speed with which the numerically packet propagate is correct. But then the advection equation tells us that the initial condition amplitude should be preserved. That we do not see here. Rather, we see that when time goes from 0.004 to 0.012, the packet amplitude, the red computed solution, becomes progressively smaller and smaller as compared to the exact solution. This happens because the numerical schemes add numerical diffusion implicitly, unknowingly, to the most of the CFD practitioners. We do not know actually, but the method is doing that part. So the physical nature suggests that the packet amplitude should not amplify, should not decay. We do it numerically and we see that the packet amplitude has been attenuated, and that is disaster. So if you look at the solution obtained using quick scheme, finite volume method scheme, you can see that by the time we reach point 1, the solution amplitude becomes very close to 0. So there is no pressure fluctuation or there is no fluctuation of the signal. So if you use such kind of methods to find out some propagation, let us say you want to actually track sound waves created by speaker. Although you are able to hear sound at a certain distance from the speaker, if you use these methods, those methods will completely attenuate that sound and you will numerically predict that at the observer there is no sound because the methods are attenuating the sound signals unknowingly to us in complete opposite to what physics tells us. So such error is called as dissipation error. And traditionally, the way we calculate numerical error as discretion error, total error, we should basically talk only about dispersion error, dissipation error. That is more better way to understand the physical nature, how the solution evolve with time and space. Okay, so there is a flaw the way CFD community characterize quantifies numerical error. Now, why this thing happens, I cannot tell you in 1.5 hours. If I have to explain you, I will have to actually teach these things over a whole semester. And if you are interested, and I expect that everyone who is doing CFD, he or she has to be interested in understanding these basic numerical methods. You can actually refer to one of the NPTEL course on Foundation of Scientific Computing. So I have given this slide. I am going to share these slides with Professor Mershi if you actually request. If you need, I am going to share. So you can actually go through this lecture series. Okay, then you will develop understanding of numerical methods. Remember that every lecture you will have to actually spend at least 3 to 4 hours on yourself in order to understand, in order to practice, in order to develop your own understanding what has been taught in class. So there is actually say that nothing comes free in life. If you want to understand how numerical methods can actually play a role of villain in CFD simulations, you will have to understand their behavior, and you can either go through this actually lectures, you can refer to this book where things have been explained in a scientific way, and that with that understanding one can do some kind of a serious computing. Um, Remember actually we are as good as our tools are. The numerical methods has to be accurate in order to predict better solution. So why it happens, why dispersion error happens, why dissipation error happen, why numerical methods cannot resolve a signal, all those things I have just not told you. I have just told you that there are some problems. Okay, and if you are interested in understanding those problems, please read this material. It will need some serious efforts. Okay, now with these problems actually I'm actually telling you that there are some issues, okay, in computing. So acoustical quantities basically, when it specifically comes to acoustic problems, one has to realize that the sound disturbances, they are several orders smaller as compared to background atmospheric pressure. So atmospheric pressure is something around 10 raised to power 5 Pascal, while the smallest disturbance, which we can hear at 1000 Hz, can be as small as 20 micropascal. So you can see that there is order 10 difference between the background atmospheric pressure and the sound disturbances. The numerical methods should not have error, or should have error at least 10 to 12 times smaller, okay, than the mean value actually. So CA simulations are difficult. They demand accurate numerical methods. And the way we have said, no matter like whatever the wavelength and frequency is, whatever the physical velocity with which those disturbances convect, numerical methods should actually follow that velocity. Numerically propagating those disturbances should follow that physical velocity. There should they numerical should solution should satisfy phase dissipation and dispersion properties. Engineering problems usually demand solving or resolving acoustical disturbances with high frequencies. When you have high frequencies, things vary rapidly with time. So the time step has to be very, very small. When you deal with high frequency signal, those disturbances have smaller wavelength. In order to resolve those smaller wavelength signals, you have to have grid with smaller grid spacing, which increases basically number of grid points in the whole domain. That increases computational cost, and the whole actually event actually becomes much more difficult when you have acoustical spectra, larger acoustical spectra. So you have both low and high frequency signal. The low frequency signal demands computation over a longer time, and high frequency disturbances demand computing with smaller time step on a smaller grid size, not smaller grid size, smaller grid spacing, very large grid size. So these problems are very, very challenging. And then the boundary conditions also are troublesome when it comes to solving aeroacoustic problems. Okay. So these things were actually discussed in last 1 hour almost like. And now I'm going to the next slide. Um, So now actually I'm going to show you some solutions. So we have discussed some theory for 1 hour, and next 20 minutes time I'm going to show you some solutions actually. So here I am showing you solution of a advection equation, 1D wave equation, and that we have obtained using accurate methods which are constructed by us. So here basically at time t equal to 0, I have given some initial condition. Solution of this problem has been obtained using a special discretion scheme called as OCCD scheme and time integration scheme called as ORK5 scheme. You can see that the packet retains its initial amplitude plus and minus between 0.05, and its speed is also exact. Okay, it has basically gone from 20 to 40. The propagation speed is 0.01. In 200 times it propagates through distance 20. So we get accurate solution. But if the same solution has been obtained using a scheme called a C6RK4 scheme, where C6 is sixth order compact scheme, special discretion scheme, RK4 is time integration scheme, same initial condition, but now you can see that the packet amplitude has been attenuated unphysically. So one can use accurate methods to track disturbances properly. While such schemes may not be useful to compute on a smaller grid size. Okay. So here we have talked about propagation of sound disturbance. Okay. Next slide. I am going to talk about acoustic radiation from an oscillating circular piston in a wall. So here, this model problem, you have a speaker whose diaphragm basically vibrating in the x direction, and then you have solid wall from 10 to 100. So the vibrations given by this particular piston, those vibrations will be sent in this whole domain in the form of sound waves, and solution of those sound waves at a particular time can be obtained by solving these partial differential equations. These are linearized compressible flow equations. Okay, and problem has been taken from this part. You can see here that I will have to come out of this pointer. Yes. So can you actually see the sound waves propagating in the domain? So you have here a wall. So Professor Mershi, is this animation is
Yes, sir, it is
operated?
visible. It is
Okay.
visible.
Yeah. So you can see here that when the piston diaphragm vibrates, those sound disturbances they propagate in air. And if you are in front of the speaker, you hear larger sound. If you are in one corner, then you are not able to hear sound with the same amplitude. So this brings us to another important feature of sound field. The sound waves, they have amplitude and frequency. There is some nature called as directivity that is also there in sound field. So in some region of sound field, you can hear larger sound, while in other region, you will hear lesser sound being same distance from the speaker. That is essentially because the directivity nature of the sound field. We have computed solution actually. We have taken solution along this vertical line and plotted our solution with some another computed solution which shows good match. So here we have seen solution of acoustic problem using accurate numerical methods. Okay. So we are able to compute sound wave propagation in space accurately. But then sound waves basically also undergo reflection. So same problem has been discussed now here. Okay. So here actually you can see that at time t equal to 0, we have given some disturbance, that is pressure disturbance. You can imagine that at t equal to 0, above ground, which is basically y is equal to 0 line, which is basically a reflecting surface, y is equal to 0 line. So above ground, you have burst a firecracker, which has sent some sound waves in the domain. So the sound created by this firecracker will propagate in all directions, but when it will reach this ground, it will get reflected back, and then there will be a pulse that is going because of this firecracker, and there will be another pulse which is basically reflected pulse from this ground. So if you obtain solution of this partial differential equations with this initial condition, you will get solution. So the left column shows our solution, while the right column shows some another accurate computed solution. So at different time, you can see that the pressure pulse expands in the domain, while from the ground there is a reflected pressure pulse. So the reflected pressure pulse also travel. So here at y equal to 0, we have given reflecting boundary conditions which reflect this pulse. And we are able to capture here sound wave reflection accurately. That is the purpose of solving this problem. Now, in order to propagation and reflection, there is something called as diffraction. Okay. So that diffraction problem is shown here. This is a model problem where you have a solid sphere here, and then you have a sound source here. At t equal to 0, sound source sends some sound pulse. It travels towards this sphere, gets reflected back. Part of that sound pulse diffract around this object, and point A, B, and C, they note down that pressure pulse. So whether our used numerical methods can solve this problem accurately or not, can capture this diffraction accurately or not, we were interested in actually solving. We were interested in knowing that thing. This particular problem can be actually seen as the sound created by these propeller blades. That sound will not be interested to the pilot and like passengers in this aircraft. So we are simulating this problem from that perspective as well, whether our numerical methods can capture diffraction, reflection properly. So here basically we are solving these differential equations. The sound source, that source term is present only at t equal to 0, and corresponding solution, the pressure variation at point A, B, and C has been shown here. So pressure variation with respect to time, and our computed solution gives a kind of analytical solution. It predicts that analytical solution. This shows actually the robustness of our method. It can capture propagation, reflection, diffraction accurately. Okay. Now, having said about these three problems, we have applied that numerical method to solve one interesting problem, and that problem is about noise reduction. So usually in life, actually, in front of road or close to road, people construct such kind of barriers which prevent direct sound entering to residential area. And what they do is that most of the sound energy, in if this acoustic barrier, if it would have not been there, this sound energy would have directly come here. But now once we put here barrier, some energy gets absorbed, some energy gets reflected. So there is a reduction in noise in this residential area. We have solved that problem, and you can see here I have a sound source here, I have a barrier here, and then I have a reflecting ground here. And these solutions, this animation is created by solving these partial differential equations. And we have given sound source here. You can see that sound source sends sound waves with a particular frequency. Some waves are reflected from this barrier, some waves are reflected from this ground. And then there is a superposition which creates this complex pattern. In addition to that, I will just come to previous slide. I will again show you that you can see that some sound waves, they will get bent around this object, and they will travel in this area, which will basically have less noise. But then this bending of sound waves is called as diffraction. Higher the wavelength, more bending is observed. Lower the wavelength, higher the frequency. In that case, the diffraction ability reduces. So can you now see that how the accurate numerical methods can capture basically the sound wave propagation, reflection, and diffraction? You can compare here the effect of barrier. So this is the disturbance pressure at particular time. This basically the sound pressure amplitude at a particular time. So when you have barrier on the right hand side of the source, there is a reduction in noise. If the barrier is not there, you can see these red spots corresponding to higher pressure. So there will be more noise. If you take actually the root mean square of the pressure, sound pressure, it will look like this for the no barrier case, and for the barrier case, you can see that most of the acoustic energy is concentrated only in the lower half. The right half doesn't have any energy. So one can use these accurate methods to evaluate the sound disturbances appropriately. Okay. Now, having said these things, you can actually see that what happens when we have a barrier with grooves, and you can see that such shape, basically some disturbances get trapped, they get reflected back, and then very less amount of disturbances, they end up in being this region where we want to reduce the sound. Such grooved shape generally we see in the residential buildings where you have like such balconies whose top and bottom material many times unknown to us, it is actually designed as a sound absorbing material. So the people who are staying inside these balconies or inside these houses, they will not be affected with the road noise. So this is not to look good. This is not for the aesthetic purpose. This is also for maintaining less noise inside the living space. So here actually we have compared all those shapes like barrier shapes. The sound source is located at the same place, same frequency, same amplitude, but you can see that the barrier with which we have grooves, it has more blue area, and then that blue area corresponds to reduction in noise. So you can see that one can use numerical methods to construct these sound isolation devices appropriately. One can design their shape, geometry, material, so that we will have more amount of noise reduction. Okay. Now, this is one interesting paper. So, Professor Maharshi, are you able to see this slide? Construction of an acoustic diode?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. So, this is one interesting idea actually, which is given in this paper. The authors claim to have designed acoustic diode. We know about diodes that diodes are the devices which allow electricity to flow only in one direction. But then there is some term called as acoustic diodes, which basically allow sound energy to propagate only in one direction, not in the other direction. So you can see here that we have basically two parts, the left part and the right part, and this left and right part are joined using some device which is shown here, which has series of such grooves. From right to left, the sound energy can propagate, but from left to right, not enough sound energy propagates. So this is like a acoustic diode where sound energy is allowed to go only in one direction, not in another direction. One can actually like dream of constructing windows which will allow noise created in house to go outside, but the outside noise will not come inside by constructing windows in a smart way. So that is just a speculation. Okay. So having said these things, till now, whichever the examples we have seen, there was no mean flow as such. Whenever there is a mean flow, then actually the things become even more interesting. Now I am going to talk little bit about direct numerical simulation approach for CA simulations. There are still actually, so we have time now around 11:11 now. The talk is up to 11:30. What I will do is that I will try to cover up to 11:20, 22, and then I will actually, so I'm now quickly summarizing all these things. Okay. I'm just trying to give you a flavor of what we are doing and what one can do. So then actually we can have time for discussion. So let us actually talk about. So I will like to take your attention to this one interesting JFM article where the authors basically obtain sound generation by a laminar two-dimensional flow past a circular cylinder. So this is a group from Tohoku University, Sendai in Japan, and they have solved compressible Navier-Stokes equation to directly obtain the sound field and hydrodynamic field information using accurate methods. Okay, we have followed this work, we have followed their work, and we have performed like how sound gets generated by when there is a flow past a object like a cylinder. Okay, so the author said that they have solved two-dimensional unsteady compressible Navier-Stokes equations using finite difference methods. We have used our designed OCCD ORK5 accurate schemes to solve this problem. The used grid was like 871 points in the theta direction, 503 points in the wall normal direction. You can see that the outer boundary is located at 1500 times the diameter of the body, which is probably huge as compared to what traditional people do in CFD calculations. When it comes to error acoustics, you need to have exceptionally large domains because the sound disturbances have tendency to reflect back from this outer boundary. Okay, so we have performed these simulations and then we compared our Strohal number, drag coefficient, amplitude of lift and drag coefficient with the results which give us a good match. The hydrodynamic quantities match well. Interesting thing is that how our sound field looks like. So we have used numerical methods, information about which is given in this paper. What you see is that when there is a laminar flow past a cylinder, alternate vortices are shed in the wake region, and then that creates some kind of a unsteadiness. The drag coefficient variation is shown by a solid curve with respect to time, while the lift coefficient variation is seen as this dotted line with respect to time. You can see that the amplitude of lift coefficient variation is far more as compared to this drag coefficient variation, which results in sound waves basically mostly propagating in the upper and downward direction. This particular slide here shows you disturbance pressure, which has been computed as subtraction of mean pressure from the instantaneous pressure. So if you subtract the mean pressure, time average mean pressure from the instantaneous value of pressure, you get disturbance pressure. Close to the body in the wake region, you have hydrodynamic and sound fluctuations. Away from the body, so the body is centered at 0, 0. Away from the body, all these pressure disturbances are nothing but sound waves. And maybe I will like to show you here this video. Yes. So Professor Mershi, are you able to see this video?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
So you can see that the time varying this disturbance pressure, it mainly goes in the topward and bottomward direction. So one can actually obtain such variation only using high accuracy schemes. If we do not have good methods, solution of CA problems it can be think just like a dream actually. So accurate numerical methods are required. So in the previous slide, you can see you have seen that sound mainly propagates in the top and bottom direction because the lift coefficient basically has higher amplitude as compared to drag coefficient. It is called as dipolar nature of sound field, and we have just here compared our disturbance pressure contours with the published results in the JFM paper, which shows a very good nature, actually similar nature. The theoretical decay rate for their problem is 1 by square root of r. For this cylindrical problem is like 1 by square root of r. And our decay in pressure amplitude, disturbance pressure amplitude follows that theoretical decay rate, which shows that we are able to resolve sound disturbances very accurately. Uh, so that is the nature. And we have actually published one paper in flow past in physics of fluids. We have found out how sound gets generated when the flow happens past a wedge at different angle of attack. Again, the domain dimension has to be very large and grid size has to be exceptionally small. When you do that kind of simulation, so I'm going quickly actually, when you do that kind of simulation, you can see that at 30-degree angle of attack, you have these vortices. These shared vortices are responsible for creating those sound disturbances, which are shown here, disturbance through the disturbance pressure contours. If you change angle of attack, the shared vortices in the wake region, they change, their magnitude, their frequency change. As a result, the sound waves are also changed. You can see the difference between alpha equal to 30 and 60-degree case. So if you have accurate methods, you can capture how the change in shared vortices in the wake region affect the sound radiated by flow past a wedge. So the same problem actually then we have applied to understand if the cylinder basically does uh, oscillation. So then what happens? So basically there is an animation, but somehow it is not playing. Let me check one more time. So it's not playing. No worry. You can think about this cylinder basically performing rotary oscillations. Now, when there will be flow around cylinder, then what happens is that the shed vortices in the region, in the wake region, they change because the cylinder is performing rotary oscillation with different frequency and amplitude. What we see is that when the frequency and amplitude of rotary oscillation they have been changed, the shed vortices are changed, and accordingly, the sound waves which are radiated they are also changed. So the CFD community generally think about this problem of oscillation of a body from the flow control perspective. But then when we have such shade vortices change in the wake region, we are not only controlling the flow, but we are also controlling the sound waves which are radiated. So here actually I'm showing you animation here. I hope it is visible for different forcing frequencies. So forcing frequency zero point 0.3, forcing frequency 0.6, 1.0 and 2.0. So this is like frequency of rotary oscillation. Okay. So when I have low frequency of oscillation, the wavelength of the sound disturbances is very large. When I have high forcing frequency, the wavelength of sound disturbances is small. That means here I have created a low frequency sound when the low frequency excitation was given, and then I have created a high frequency sound when I have higher forcing frequency. So if you oscillate cylinder at different forcing frequency, basically you get different sound. So the sound of different frequencies you can create. So that is what we have shown in this particular paper. We have also actually done some calculations where we have shown that if the cylinder forcing frequency and vortex shedding frequency they are slightly different, one can even see modulation or bits formation of sound waves. So the disturbance pressure variation of with respect to time at some distance from the body, it shows some kind of a bit formation. Remember these bits, whenever we call someone, we are able to hear those bits, like some discrete bits actually we hear, right? So those bits also can be created by choosing a appropriate frequency and amplitude of rotary oscillation. And then we have this one article in JASA, very renowned journal, where we have shown that actually if my cylinder undergoes a mean rotation and rotary oscillation, the mean rotation causes eddies on either side of the wake of the mean rotation in one particular direction cause difference in shape and size and magnitude of vorticity distribution in the wake region changes. It is possible to actually send signal completely in one direction as compared to other direction. That has been done through this mean rotation. Okay. So you can see here that if my mean rotation, which is basically given by this amplitude AR, if this mean rotation change, then I basically send sound waves in one particular direction. So this is actually alteration of sound field by giving excitation to the body. That is what essentially we are talking about. And that also is visible through these directivity plots. Now, having said these things, like informing about all these details in one single lecture is difficult. You are encouraged to actually read these references If anyone has any concern, I will be very happy actually to address your issues, concerns via email on phone. But I will just show you the last paper. So this got selected as the editor speak last March, last May, something like that. So here actually we have reduced the sound generated by flow past a body by using some splitter plates. You can see that the flow approaches this square cylinder, and then we have these two splitter plates in the wake region, which inject actually vorticity of different sign compared to the vorticity created on the surface of the cylinder, which results in a small vorticity, and then creation of this small vorticity, shedding of vortices away from the body significantly reduces sound. So we do not have now time. I will quickly wind up. You can see that basically the insertion of those filter plates creates sound in the wake region, creates actually ask those ADs to shed away from the body. Location of those filter plates is very important. Some location actually delay vortex shading, and that kind of case also results in attenuation of sound waves, which is evident here from the disturbance pressure signals. So one can control noise using splitter plates. Now I will just go directly now to the conclusion slide. Okay, it says that actually when we deal with CA problems, we have to very much sure about like these numerical schemes, using accurate numerical schemes. It is central to doing any CFD simulation. Please read, go through that course material which I have given, and all these things that I have just now shown. It has been done by my research scholars. Both all of them they have now graduated from this place. Jitenjay worked on acoustic barriers. Bikash and Naveen worked on construction and analysis of sound field, accurate numerical methods, construction of accurate numerical methods, and analyzing of sound fields. So they have done a good work, and everything belongs to them. Whatever I have shown here, and I'm happy actually to see their face. They are now graduated from this place, and I'm winding up my lecture. Thank you very much. Anyone has any doubt, I'm very much like eager to answer. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir, for delivering such a wonderful session. Yes, any participant having any question, he or she can ask. Yes, anyone having any question?
Yeah, I hope I my lecture was not boring for all of you.
Not at all. Amazing one, sir.
Yeah, wait, yes.
Yes, any participant having any question?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have heard in one actually conference, the speaker said to audience that there are no stupid questions, there are only stupid answers. So, so feel free to ask questions. So all the thing that I want to say is that I was trying to share my joy with all of you. There is something is required to like the traditional CFD doesn't give us all the information. We need to understand the scientific aspects of computing. Please actually go through those lectures, understand that material, and do the simulations. Otherwise, many of the times one use available packages and then they remain as a black box to us. We do not know how good or bad our solutions are. Every time we rely on experimental evidences, but then those experiments also come with their own errors, and there is no logic behind why the numerical error should be same as the experimental error. There is no logic behind why our results should match their experimental results. So that is how it is.
Yes,
If we are,
Janak, you wanted
yeah.
to say something, Janak? Yes, anyone having any question?
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Sir, I have some questions, sir,
Yes.
regarding This sound you said that, sir. It is possible to capturing the shock wave.
It is
Uh,
possible to capturing shock waves, yes.
uh,
But then actually you understand that shock wave is a small region where you have a steep gradient in solution variable. And then in order to capture that steep gradient, actually we have to have small grid spacing. But then when the physical nature actually has such steep gradients, numerically we end up in having those high frequency or like low wavelength disturbances which are not physical. We have to have some dissipation, add some dissipation where we have strong gradient that actually reduces the gradient actually. So one can capture the shock, but then when we do it numerically, we end up in exciting those high frequency scales also. To attenuate those, we have to add dissipation, which reduces the accuracy of our solution. Yes, please continue your question.
and sir, in this simulation, the FSI is taking a role in this subject.
So FSI means fluid structure interaction, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So actually the vibration cases which I have shown you, rotary oscillation cases. So there actually there is a direct actually communication from structure to the fluid, but the effect of fluid on structure was not considered. So there was no two-way coupling involved. But then if someone is working in the area of FSI, it will be great actually that effect of forces on that structure. If we find out and then how the noise gets created by fluid structure interaction, that will be wonderful to see. Yes, but I have not done it that way. I have just taken one way coupling from
Sir,
structure to fluid.
which software you done that simulation, sir?
We write our own code. We do not rely on softwares. So the actually the solutions that you have seen, they have been actually obtained by constructing highly accurate methods. What this accuracy I am talking about, like resolving ability, dispersion and dissipation list methods, they can be actually understood by going through the material which I suggested actually. Not every CFD class talk about these things. So one has to actually go through that thing. So we have written our own solver, parallel computing solver, and the used discretion methods are also designed by us so that it guarantees dispersion and dissipation less nature of methods.
And sir, before you said that there is a one advection equation or wave equation is there for
Yes,
one day.
yes,
We can do further in 2D and 3D also,
yes, you can do it.
or
Yes,
it
you
is
can do it.
complicated.
No, no, you can do it. It is advisable. It will be great if you can do it in two-dimensional and three-dimensional. But then the purpose of that, using that equation was it gives us some kind of a acid test. Uh, People generally working in CFD, they say that our problem is too complex, non-linearity, multi-phase, multi-dimension problem. Here we are saying very simple. Just solve this simple equation. If your numerical method is able to solve this simple equation, then you have hope of using your numerical methods on complex problems. But if your method fails here, there is no hope that those used methods can be used for solving complex problems. Now, most of the numerical methods, they are dispersive and they are dissipative. And the one-dimensional equation, wave equation, is something like a acid test. It clearly points out dissipative and dispersive nature in your domain. Okay, so so it helps actually to characterize your numerical method. So please feel free actually to go in two-dimension and three-dimension. That will be you great. In fact, the barrier problem which I said, if you go to three-dimension, you can solve sound propagation inside a room actually. That is possible. Yes.
Sir, but someone is saying that it is difficult to solve 3D problems of advection equation.
Why the difficulty should be there? Like it is a linear equation, first of all, not like a Burger's equation. We do not have to worry about shock-induced Fourier modes. Yes, the difficulty is there because you will need large number of resources because when it comes to three dimension, the grid points required will be very large. But then if you use accurate methods, at least you can attempt some problems actually if the methods are accurate, they do not need large number of grid points, large memory. Reduction in grid points reduces number of equations solved, and then these accurate methods helps you to achieve high performance in computing, right? So it is possible. Yes, it's not that difficult, I would say.
And
Yes. Thank you.
and
Thank
sir,
you.
Yes,
thank you,
yes.
sir.
Yes. Any other participant having any query? Okay, then thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Engineering
Yeah.
Department, EDIT. I'm really thankful to you, sir. It was a really good talk, sir. The
Thank you very.
presentation was also pretty engaging and eye-catchy, sir. You have covered you have started from fundamentals of simulation, how simulations of the acoustic problems can be done, and the problems that you have solved was really good, sir. So thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thanks
Sir,
for his appreciation. Yes, Mr. Nirmal Kumar. Yes, tell me.
sir, I have one more question, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
sure, sure.
one subject is there, sir, in computational gas dynamics
Uh-huh.
by Lenny book.
Uh-huh.
In that book, sir, it is written that the shock wave is in when we consider in airfoil.
Mhm.
Uh, till means it is not capturing accurate shock wave. Is there something reason is that?
Yeah, actually, see, basically, you have those governing differential equations, right? And we are obtaining solution of that governing differential equations using methods, numerical methods. If our numerical methods are accurate, then the used obtained solution will be also accurate, right? Sometimes, actually, what happens is that your flow is three-dimensional, and then when those shocks are formed, there is an interaction between those shock waves and boundary layer, which basically triggers which basically makes your flow turbulent. So the flow structures, the kind of scales present in your structures becomes very large. And when that thing happens, then actually capturing all those small eddies needs actually use of very large grid size. Computational resources are not always available. So that's why that book may have said that capturing that shock wave dynamics, flow dynamics is difficult. That may be the reason. Okay. So yeah, what I have done is that I have given my mobile number, my name in the chat box. Anyone who is interested, please feel free to call me. We will discuss. There is a limit on time actually with which we can go, and Professor Maharshi Thakkar is actually bound to follow the schedule. So
Sir,
another talk, yeah. So
we
another
can
talk,
solve
will,
we
you
can
can
solve
call.
by ADI method also.
We will talk on it about it, Mr. Nirmal Kumar. Please feel free to call me. I have given
Okay.
my mobile number. Anyone can call me. Okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Sure.
so thank you, Professor Marshi. Nice to be with all of you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good luck.
Yeah.
Best wishes for your program.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, bye. Take care. Bye.
Yeah. So the second session of